Good evening. Winthrop Votes continues. Been a minute since we've spoke, seen you folks, and I thought tonight would be a good night for us to get back on stage or back on the show, if you will, because we have some interesting things happening in Winthrop. But before we get to that, I would like to um, fill you guys in on kind of where we've been, where we're going, the new direction. First and foremost, I think it's important to share with you all why we've not been on the air. And by the way, I've lost my producer, as you can probably tell. So my production guy is no longer here, and I've got some work to do to clean this mess up, if you will. But I've been dealing with some legal issues, and my partner Scott has decided to move on. He's pursuing a Vets podcast, the Vets Connect podcast. In our next segment, I will certainly bring to light more information about that. But already off and running and off to a chipping start, if you will. Busy every day of the week he is with booking more and more veterans services, and he's trying to connect veterans with those services. So good for him. We're going to miss him. I want to thank him. I think over the last 2 years, Winthrop Votes has done some good things for Winthrop. We brought to light many, many important issues, issues that are going on in the public schools. We talked about a flag policy debate. We had some what you might call unscrupulous leadership in the town council that we brought to light. A lot of stuff I don't want to relive anymore because it's time to move on. And I've decided to change the format a little bit. I want it to be more about interviews, less about exposing and bringing the darkness of politics into the light, although that will still be part of what we do. But I really want to try to create a place, again, a second attempt to get more conversations going. I want more people to participate, whether they agree with us or not. Um, the bottom line is nothing gets solved if the two parties or folks that don't agree can't come together and find some common ground. So we're gonna tack in that direction again and see how we do. But tonight is a important night because Winthrop, Winthrop's in the midst of this fight, if you will, or argument or debate or disagreement with the MBTA Communities Act, Chapter 3A. And I'm going to kind of zip through this, but this is a housing bill, or actually, it's not really a housing bill. The Section 3A, which is about 3 paragraphs long, was squeezed into this larger MBTA Communities bill with the hopes of getting any community that's adjacent to or has a MBTA service in it, so a platform, a train, and folks can correct me if I'm wrong. But if you're being serviced by the MBTA or you're adjacent to a town or city that's being serviced by the MBTA, or you have a commuter rail running through you, you are subject to Section 3A, which basically requires you to zone for by right development of multifamily structures. There's a formula. It's confusing. But this has sparked a debate. This has also sparked some pushback against the community from our state senator, Lydia Edwards, and that has produced an opponent. And so I don't want to spend too much more time talking about 3A, and I want to bring in that opponent, Miss Jeanna Marie Tamas. Gianna, did I get that right?
You did. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're super happy to have you, and glad that you have decided to run. So let's kind of step back a little bit here. And why don't you give us a little bit of background about who you are, why you're running? It's your show here, so give us a little bit about what you're all about.
Well, thank you so much. So, again, my name is Jeanna Marie Tamas. I grew up here in Winthrop. I was born and raised. And with that being said, as a young 20-year-old trying to go out and explore the world, always found myself back here renting and trying to purchase my first home as well. uh, when my husband and I got married, we knew that there was no other place we wanted to raise a family. Therefore, we purchased our now current property. I bring up with the wanting to purchase the property back in my mid to late 20s, but as we know, it's very daunting and sometimes very unaffordable. And that is a huge issue for all of us here in Massachusetts and a concern of mine. Um, so I got involved in politics, I think like many others in 2020, maybe even, no, excuse me, 2016, I was very involved. But then when 2020 came about, I knew I actually had to do something because the state of our country, what happened with the election process, I just knew I couldn't just be another Republican on the sidelines, hoping and praying that others would do the work for me. I've always been a person that has seen an issue and a problem and has dived headfirst in, particularly when it comes to the unfair and unjust treatment of others, if things don't seem like they are truthful, and trying to bring the experts in and get everyone together so we can have a conductive and conducive conversation to actually accomplish something. Right now, from this perspective and point of view, from where I sit, it doesn't seem like Lydia has the best interest of our district. There are a lot of false promises throughout her current tenure that I feel like a lot of people are fed up. And also, I truly believe that people are finally waking up that when it comes to change, you actually have to start at the local level, meaning your towns, your cities, your school boards, your your state senators in your district. You have to vote the right people in for the outcome that you want. Um,
I have to, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. You said the local level. The
mhm.
mantra of our show has always been all politics starts at the local level. And really, all politics is local because, to your point, it's about the local boards can contribute to the control of the state boards, which contribute to the control of the federal government. It's really kind of interesting. But anyway, we digress. Maybe another day.
No, that is correct. No, you
We lost her. I think she hit the eject button. Let me text her and get her back. I'm sure she'll show up in a minute. Anyway, so in the meantime, a little bit more about 3A while we're waiting for Gianna to come back on. I hope she didn't have a power outage. Again, for those of you who don't know, this is a pretty onerous and overreaching bill. It was drafted oddly by Joseph Boncore, who's a resident of this community. And right now the requirement is 800 to zone for 882 multifamily units. There's no component for low income or affordable. There's nothing. It's just about building the units. They can be 2 and 3 family. There's no occupancy limits. There's no discussion of there's no discussion of infrastructure issues. There's no money to help us upgrade. There's no money that comes with this bill to help us upgrade our public safety, which is already currently understaffed, underfunded for the work that needs to be done with our current population, and that doesn't even address the fact or the concerns of the rest, the DPW, the DPW, or any of the other departments. So Gianna's back. Glad to see everything's okay.
sorry about that.
What happened?
Our internet for some reason gets a little wonky at this time at night. Whether it's I have no idea, to be quite frank. It just throttles sometimes. Um, Going back to your point, though, while I was backstage waiting to come back on board and the internet to fix itself, going back to your point regarding, I know Joey very well, or at least I did. We went to school together. We grew up in the community together. And I'm actually a little taken aback that he would be, as a lifelong Winthrop resident, on board with this bill, considering that he lives in the area. His children go to school in the area. So my biggest thing is I will represent the community. I'm not going to go into the state senate and just do what's best for donors and PACs in the year to advance my career. I'm not going into Massachusetts State Senate for a career. That is ridiculous. We need to have term limits. That is a huge passion of mine, is implementing term limits along with insider training disclosures. But 3A here in Winthrop would be incredibly detrimental. I think, as everyone knows, our fire, police, and our EMTs are stretched to the limits. Our EMTs don't only serve Winthrop solo. We do 99% of the time, but someone in Revere might phone over in Beachmont, and our EMTs and firemen might be helping and deployed over there. And then we have a crisis here in Winthrop. If we add more capacity, that is just not going to be conducive. And then what happens when we do add more residents? We need to expand our fire and EMTs and police officers. How do we pay that? Where does that come from? Our Winthrop budget is already stretched to the max. We're a little bit different than East Boston. East Boston does have a more expendable budget per se. They do have the resources to implement that they have the funds to implement the resources that they need if this does go through. And again, it's not really going to affect East Boston. This is going to highly affect Winthrop and most of residential Revere. Revere, you have to, when it comes to 3A, you do have to almost exclude Revere Beach because they do have a good handle on it. The city of Revere does know what they're doing, but it's going to, again, affect Beachmont and those smaller areas that, just like Winthrop, we want to keep it a nice, cozy hometown where we can thrive and be a community and obtain the resources that we need, particularly when it comes to our school systems.
So that's a great download um, of everything, really. Like, you've answered a ton of my questions, and I want to thank you for that. So now you've got to meet with a curveball here because I don't have you've taken so many questions off my list. But let me ask you, just from a development perspective, I want to get behind you a little bit, understand a little bit from you about how you feel about development in general. Like, where do you see? So there's going to be a 2.5 override. I believe there's going to be a 2.5 override on the ballot in November,
Mhm.
and I have some opinions, and pretty much everybody knows them with regard to where we should try and seek other monies, and it's not from the taxpayer. But I'm curious what your position is on that.
My position is I don't want the Winthrop residents taxed any further than they need to be, number one. Number two, development wise, when it comes to implementing development in Winthrop, I might be very, very wrong. I might just be speaking as a brand new homeowner and, again, a Winthrop resident, but I feel like we're a little developed out. I don't know where are we going to put okay, so let me back up real quick. The last 5 years prior to when I got married, I lived in Southie. Southie is being developed left and right. It is wild. Where a historical triple decker was, or a beautiful single historical family home was, a developer would come in, knock it down to the ground, and all of a sudden you have 16 units next to you. Now you only have to provide one parking space with that, by law. Um, but everyone knows there's two parking spots, or most folks have two cars. It's a disaster. It's a nightmare. Again, I've seen it firsthand. It strains the streets. Southie had to redo all their water systems. The streets have been torn up ever since for the last 5.5 years. It's wild, and I just don't see that being a suitable fit in Winthrop unless there is a larger plot of land that we put up. Like we have knocked down single family homes that were dilapidated, and there were beautiful townhomes and a duplex put up. I think that that's quite all right as long as square footage allows. And we have to really be observant of all the bylaws, zoning, and variances, and really take into accountability the additional residents that would be here in Winthrop and utilizing our resources again, such as school, fire, EMT, police. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's alarming. We're already over capacity in our middle high school in terms of student count. It's not. I mean, I don't want to be an alarmist, but because it's not like they're packed in like sardines, um, but we still we have a teacher shortage,
Mhm.
and in particular an ELL, so English language learning teachers shortage, and we have an uptick in students that need to learn English. Not to mention again that classrooms are getting a little bit bigger, and we have a general teacher shortage. Adding all of this housing would really exacerbate that problem.
Mhm.
Um, so I I grow very concerned from that perspective. The schools and the children have always been my passion, so it's good to hear that you're on the same page there. Um, but I mean, let's back up a little bit. Being a state senator, that there's based upon what I've learned from having some friends that serve. I'll leave names out of it at this point, but having friends that serve at the state house, um, there's a lot of gamesmanship or chess, if you
Mhm.
will, and negotiating. You know, I
Backdoor
don't want
deals.
to, yeah, I don't want to say that because not everybody's engaged in that kind of thing, but there is okay. If you want this in the bill, I'll take that out. That kind of thing going on. My question to you is, where can you point to, or what can you point to in your experience that will help you navigate those complexities?
So I have been in project management for a very long time in the construction world. I worked in the general contracting world, building multi-million dollar buildings as a assistant project manager at that time. Now I'm in renewable energies as a project manager, and I have to deal and I manage about 50 men every day. Along with my team. So negotiating and dealing and figuring out what's best for the whole team in a full capacity I'm pretty good at. And I grew up with three brothers. I mean, and an Italian family. Everything was a negotiation. Um, no, but in a very serious note, when it comes to, and I do understand that as
Yeah.
a body have to get along and negotiate here and there. Um, compromise my district and take away what's fundamentally important to my constituents. I'm
Oh, we lost you. Oh, you're back already. You're back already. That was quick.
great. We need to call Xfinity. It was wild.
Yeah. Good luck.
No, no, no. What I was trying to get at is, um, if it's not going to be good for my constituents, I'm not going to do it. And again, I do understand compromise and working together as a full body to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. I mean, at the end of the day, we do have a job. We need what's best in the state of Massachusetts. And you have to have a strong backbone too to stand up to. I'm sorry, there's a lot of bullies right now in politics. There's a lot of bullies at the state house right now that feel entitled, and it's a blessing. It's an honor to serve. It's not an entitlement. You're not entitled.
you know, um, I would, this 3A situation has opened up a lot of people's eyes to, um, we heard, well, let's use this, let's go this way. We've heard words like crush
Mhm.
Milton.
Yeah.
We've heard you're afraid of people who don't look like you.
Mhm.
I've gotten much more direct uh, and harsher language, um, but we're told we must comply, and
Mhm.
what's next? The gun laws? You're going to flout gun laws, or and that was a bit of a paraphrase.
Mhm.
Um, but the broad point being here, to your point, entitlement,
Mhm.
arrogance, I would suggest, lack of caring for our community.
Mhm.
I think, to be quite candid with you, Gianna, this is a tough fight for you,
Mhm.
and not a lot of time to go out there and get the votes, right? Like, I mean, time, but in my opinion, this is a lot of work, a lot of phones, a lot of coffee hours, a lot of.
Mhm.
Uh, maybe you could highlight some of your differences between the current sitting senator and if you were to be lucky enough to win the election?
Oh, well, with that being said, I mean, it is going to be a lot of work, but also in the same aspect from being on the street collecting signatures. Um, I I know it's a long shot, but I think people are fed up and they're ready for somebody new. I don't know Senator Edwards in any way. I've never met her, but from the way that she's voted, the bills that she's brought forward, what she's tried to do, some of it's a little foolish. Some of it, a lot of folks continually say that what she's doing in the state house is a waste of time. They're very frustrated and upset. Um, but I honestly can use all the help that anyone is willing to give. As of right now, we are in the process of collecting and verifying signatures. We need 300, but technically we need about five because of the verification system. And we're at 200 right now. So anyone that is willing to help, I am happy to come by your home and collect your signature. Um, so yeah, I mean, and when I get in again, and I really do. I wouldn't run and waste time and money and efforts if I didn't think that this was something that was 1000% necessary. We're at a critical point in our constitutional republic right now. We need actual good conservatives that aren't going to back down and actually do the work of the people for the people. So, I mean, state senate is a great place to start. I plan on serving as long as my constituents would allow. Um, but we need a change in the temperature out there, especially with this being a presidential year, electoral year. We're after the last 4 years of Biden. I mean, come on, what are we doing? It's a definition of insanity. We're beating our heads against the wall, and you don't change. It's never going to happen. It's ridiculous at this point.
So let me first continue to apologize to the viewers who are used to a much more smoothly produced show. There's a question up there on the screen. Can you please share? I mean, you've already kind of talked a little bit about your background,
Mhm.
but this viewer just wants to get a little bit more information about your background. You know, as noted, they love that new people are stepping up and getting involved. So thank you for that.
Oh, of course. No, I would love to answer that question. So my background being is again, I grew up here in Winthrop. I've always been involved in politics in one sense or another. I remember being 7 or 8 years old and standing and holding signs for Ramondi when he was running for something. I can't remember back in the day. Again, I was a child, but my parents had us heavily involved in politics at a very young age. And then I ran for state committee in a special caucus in Southie back in 2022. Jim Lyons was in charge at that time. There was a lot of crazy things going on and redistricting, and our caucus never got called. But with that being said, I got married. We purchased our home in Winthrop. So I would have only been able to serve for 3 years. I've been involved in the local level many a times, helping and assisting campaigning for, I mean, my dear friend Rob D'Amaco, who is here in Winthrop. I've helped him out on a couple of occasions. He's helped me out way more than I have him recently. I just, again, it's after 2020 happened. I don't have the stomach or capacity to sit back any further and wait for others to do things that need to get done. I'm willing to take the fight and the brunt for everyone and put in all the hard work. I know everyone is amazing and will support and help. Um, but I'm so passionate about our state and our district and the current state of our country. We can't do this any further. We won't have a USA anymore if we don't change things.
So let's interject here with a plug of a number, an email address, somehow to get in touch with you if they want to help. Unfortunately, I'm not, I can't make the graphics work. So I want you to, we'll repeat this a couple times, but share how people can get in touch with you if they want to reach out and help.
Fantastic. So my email, as of right now, we are in contact with the web designer, and we're trying to obtain a domain name, and all of that is such a process. But as of right now, I'm going to use my personal credentials, which is my first name. So my email would be my first name, which is Gianna, Jeanna dot period TAMAS at gmail.com. And my personal mobile number is 857-251-6108. My Instagram and Facebook will all be the same. Gianna for the number for MA Senate. So we are in the process of building all of that as we speak. I was only approached literally last week to do this, and I was thrilled
Yeah.
to be
Sorry.
so
Go ahead.
honored. So,
And if anybody does want to help, you can PM me your information. I can get it to her. Right now, we're in the signature collecting stage. I know I've got a couple sheets if anybody wants one. I'm working on getting at least one filled out. But I at least would like to see a race.
mhm,
I've always said from day one, I hate when seats run unopposed.
mhm.
I'm appalled at the number of career politicians that we have. I mean, I understand times change, and if you got a good one, you want to keep them in there. But good is always subjective, right? And ideas get stale. So
Right.
it might not be time for someone like me anymore or ever. I'm not sure if you were paying
That's not
attention.
true.
Uh,
You're doing the good work of getting all the information out there. This is
yeah.
critical. Being on platforms like this is critical. And if anyone needs a sheet or would again like to help in any capacity, please reach out to myself or to Todd. We just need new, fresh blood out there, and I will be right there at your front doorstep if you are willing to help and provide any material that is needed in order to assist.
So you got a supporter, Gianna. I will support you thoroughly. I'm not sure I have permission to share their name, and I can't see it anyway. And here's something you don't see very often. I agree with you, Todd. uh, so, okay, the big $1 million question. I want you to state your position on 3A loud and clear so people know this is a hot topic. Where do you stand and why?
Oh, I'm completely against it. We do not.
Uh, Hopefully, she comes right back on. Same guy. Yeah, I see that now, buddy. We're waiting on Gianna Marie to come back. Man, she has garbage internet at this time of night. So anyway, she was about to give us her download on why she's against 3A. So if those of you that want to dump out, uh, she is definitely against 3A. She is looking to run against the state senator, Miss Lydia Edwards. She is a Republican candidate, so that hill just got a lot higher in the state of Massachusetts. But we are certainly wanting to put her forward. When the votes continues, we'll be supporting her efforts to get on the ballot, and we'll watch and see how this race transpires um, as we move forward. Hold on one second here. I think I'm hearing from her. Okay, what a shame. We had we had Gianna. I don't know. Did I say Tamas? She says Tamas. I think Tamas, Tamas. We had her, but it looks like her internet is completely crapped out at this point. We'll give her a couple more minutes so you don't have to listen to me running on and on. But in any event, so she's looking for help. She's a Republican candidate to run against State Senator Lydia Edwards. Right now, we're just trying to get her on the ballot. Um, the backstage is just blue. I have full service. Hold on one second. She's texting me. Oh, hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, No video. Oh, there she is. She's back. Sorry, everybody. Boy, you had me doing a tap dance there.
I am so sorry. That is going to be the first thing I do tomorrow morning is to fix whatever is going on. Um, no, I am totally, completely against 3A. I do not think it's going to be good for Winthrop. There are a lot of issues at stake, not only the 3A issue, but also, as we all know, we have a huge illegal immigration issue right now that does affect all of us and our school systems and what have you. So that would be another. We obviously know Maura Healey is just horrific and doesn't know how to handle anything and is literally bleeding us dry. Our deficit, we had allocated 324 million for our shelter system this year, fiscal year 2024 to January of 2025. And it's estimated it's going to cost $925 million already by the end of this month. So there are many issues at stake that's going to affect us all. 3A is a huge issue. Our school system is a huge issue. And again, I am a strong Republican. I'm not a flip-floppy Republican, not a rhino. So with that being said, I really would appreciate everyone's support in any capacity.
So let's. I was just mentioning that while we were having our little separation, our technical difficulties, that you're a Republican, and my 2 cents is, and look, I'm a registered independent.
Mhm,
Nationally, I've leaned Republican since
mhm,
Clinton.
mhm,
Statewide, I've there are some Democrats that are like Reagan Democrats to me. They got a
mhm.
conservative bent to them.
Yep.
Um, but in this state, carrying that R after your name is the hill gets this
It's
much
almost
bigger.
suicide. It's almost suicide. Yep. No, I know that. And a little bit of me was almost, my husband and I talked at great length about this, was maybe do I run as an independent? Because people see the R next to their name and they're instantly turned off. But that being said, I am a true Republican. I am a little bit socially liberal, a little bit, I feel like, or libertarian, I should say. What you do in your own home is your business. How you want to live your life is your business. But I am very fiscally conservative. Um, so I am a little bit, I would say, a little bit more of a modern Republican in the context that I don't feel that women should be at home clutching their pearls and waiting to hand their husbands a martini. We but in the same breath, everyone has the right to live their lives however they please, and I support that in all capacity. Um, but we need to also be very responsible with our taxpayer money. We need to be responsible with our children's futures and how we implement programming and road mapping. Right now, the state of Massachusetts is so filled with pork when it comes to this crazy programming. The DEI programming is off the charts. I mean, we are wasting so much taxpayer money right now that could be used for our veterans, that could be used to improve our roadways and transportation. I mean, the MBTA is run by an independent third party, but they're failing miserably. And they're using our taxpayer money to fix and implement new. I mean, they want to extend the green line and they want to extend the blue line in combined the North Station and South Station. Let's fix the issues here already where the orange line isn't catching on fire every other day. Like they can get to work on time. I mean, I'm ashamed to say that I stopped taking the train. I stopped taking the metro, the MBTA, because it was constantly failing. I was constantly late. And not to sound like a snob in any capacity, but it's filthy. And I didn't feel very safe, especially at night as a woman. So let's fix that first before we invest in multiple programs with umbrellas of programs with other umbrellas of programs of that program of the program. I mean, certain programming is very important. Information is very important. But we need to really have a handle on where we're spending our money, how and why, and where are the redundancies. I'm very good at finding redundancies and waste, and I see a lot of waste right now with our money. And we need somebody to go in and say, this is redundant, and not put forth a bill regarding hair braiding in school and what's allowed and what's not allowed.
or
You know
dress.
that reference, correct? Right?
Well, no, but I'm fairly certain that it's similar to the fact that Winthrop had one in the middle school. We had a policy, a dress code that quoted the 14th Amendment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, your freedom of expression. It was bizarro, but I'm assuming, was it some type of rule that said, you can only have your hair braided a certain way, or it can be braided any way.
No,
Something.
Lydia put forth, she wasted time in her seat, and actually wrote a bill and tried to put it on the floor for vote regarding hair braiding, and how it should be completely allowed for certain sporting events and what have you, which it is. So I'm not really sure. It had to do with the young woman. She had very chunky beads, and they thought that that would be a danger to the other components. It had nothing to do with the hairstyle and culture, and it was just something. It was a complete. You can look the bill up. I forget the exact name of it, but she wasted over. I did the math. I think it was 180 hours putting together this bill. What are you doing for 180 hours of our time on your salary for this? Like, that is not. It's. I mean, things are important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying certain issues aren't incredibly important and need to be addressed, but in the same breath, we have huge issues too, where maybe dedicate 10 to 20 hours to that, not 180.
So you mentioned, you just sparked a question in my mind in reference to the First Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who knows me will tell you that I'm an absolutist when it comes to the First Amendment. I certainly don't think, and by the way, I've been guilty of this, that some of the rhetoric on Facebook and social media when it comes to having political arguments is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Giving people fancy nicknames, and I'm using that term loosely, fancy, or poking fun at them or whatever. It's. I can't agree more that at times it's not useful. It's just it doesn't advance the conversation. I get it,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, in my view, when you tamp that stuff down and you go along with tamping it down, you weaken the majority of the people and you strengthen the minority of people, and you create what we now have, which is the cancel culture.
Mm-hmm.
Which and so where I'm going with this is, I don't know what can be done. We lost her again, but she's right back. Thank you.
Back.
So I don't know what can be done from the state level. I'm not a lawmaker or a policymaker, but the there is I'll use the term cadre of people,
Mm-hmm.
some who live right here in Winthrop, who are using the court system, the legal system, to shut people up. I'd be one of them. The Winthrop police had to deal with literally hours of emails, phone calls, people coming in, you know, trying to get me arrested, and they were told flat out, there's not an arrest, there's nothing here. And
Mm-hmm.
so they would go to the courthouse and drag me to court. And they would make so much of a stink at the courthouse.
Mm-hmm.
So the point being, I also had conversations with the outgoing police chief, who tells me this is such a big problem in the state and in the country that he's adding it to the new hire training and remedial training for existing police officers, is how to deal with 1A stuff. So
Okay.
I don't know what can be done from the state, but now that I've framed out the problem, do you have any ideations on how we can deal with this, other than anti-slap cases, which wouldn't do very well in the Suffolk County Court?
No, it wouldn't. It would be a waste of time. I mean, I'm a firm bigger and with one eye. Number one, we have freedom of speech. It's one of the most amazing aspects of this country, and such a blessing that we are here and that we live in this country. We can say and do whatever we want as long as it's not a threat to somebody else's safety and harm. I mean, obviously there are certain limitations, but I no. This goes back to, I mean, freedom of the press. How many times have we seen false headlines and just a false narrative? I don't believe in it. I believe we all have the freedom of speech to say what we want, again, with the limitation that we're not invoking harm or threat to others. Um, yeah, I does that answer that? I
Well,
mean, I don't see any other way. It's one of our God given rights as an American.
yeah, no, I mean, obviously, I couldn't agree with you more on that front. Like I said, I mean, um, people get offended all every day, and I'm going to misquote this, but
Right.
Ben Franklin. I posted a quote on Facebook about Ben Franklin, who says, "If all printers, sought out to make sure," and I'm paraphrasing, "that no one was offended,
Mhm.
by their speech, there'd be nothing written, there'd be nothing printed, or
Correct.
very little printed." And we are
Well,
actually, if you think about it, we are there because everything that's printed or said on the news is kind of the same thing. Very protected. People are very careful.
yes.
It's the mob, if you will, or the minority. The
Mhm.
cancel culture has done a very good job of using the media, people's livelihoods,
Mhm.
and the court systems to shut them up. And
Mhm.
it's a real travesty.
No, it most certainly is. I think Ricky Gervais said it best, and he actually said it on The View, which I think was quite hysterical. Why should I not? I'm paraphrasing. Why should not I say what I want to say and worry about if you're offended? If that offends you, why can't I say what I want to say just because you're going to be offended? Like, absolutely ridiculous. Go move to communist China if you want to live like that and have speech tailored. And I just, and this is going back again, I think people are really, really waking up that we are so blessed to live in a country where we can do and say and live how we want. Again, with certain limitations because we all need to be safe. Um, but I think we're really seeing how our First Amendment rights are being harmed, especially as Republicans. We are instantly labeled racist, terrorist. Our bank accounts are investigated. Look at the January 6th folks. The grandma that was just sentenced to a year in jail for just walking around the tundra and praying. I mean, like, do we not have one? We need to protect it. It's very, very important. Or I mean, it's what our country was founded on. It's what all the founding fathers fought for. And I mean, this is why it's the First Amendment. First Amendment is freedom of speech, freedom of press. Second Amendment is our right to bear arms and protect ourselves from a tyrannical government. So, one, two, the most important, they could have added anything else. These men were the most brilliant men during that time, and they didn't have the internet. They didn't have freedom of open conversation. They had the British right up their tuckuses. They had to meet in secrecy for quite a bit of time. So, but they were brave and they were valiant and they were brilliant, and they put together such a wonderful, such a such a wonderful basis for our country to strive and live on, and knew back then in 1776, they knew back then that these would be longevical, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, that come in 200, 300, 400, 500 years. These would be things that would keep our country the greatest country in the whole world, and not an imperialistic country. Every other country back then, they were empires. They had basically dictators or sovereigns, king, queens, and what have you. So they knew that this was the great experiment, and they were so smart to put those things in place. So we need to respect them today.
It's interesting you say all that and about the bravery and the brains and all that. Oftentimes, I find myself referencing the founding fathers, and a couple of my friends who might be watching now or will watch this later are probably cracking up because they make fun of me because I'm always citing them,
Yeah.
especially now.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, um, if free speech wasn't so important, it would
Hmm.
not have been the First Amendment,
Hmm.
followed up to your point by the Second Amendment.
Hmm.
I mean, there will be people who will take these words and twist them all around.
Oh yeah.
But an armed society, if you look at it, an armed society is a peaceful society.
Hmm.
Obviously, there's exceptions to rules and whatnot. But um, I don't want to have the gun debate. I have my opinion, and others have theirs.
Mhm.
But the fact of the matter is, with regards to free speech, it is the thing. It is the thing that other than defend our right to defend ourselves,
Mhm.
that assures our freedom. And when it is canceled, shut down,
Mhm.
controlled, it's just not good.
Well, if you can't have freedom of discussion and discourse, then what do you have? You have a one party state and one party mind. Now you're getting into dictatorship and communism. We have to be able to have that open discussion, discourse, um, debate back and forth. Scholars need to write papers about their perspectives, and scholars stopped writing papers in the last 7 years, battling each other for fear of losing tenure, for fear of losing their 250,000 job at Harvard, one of the most brilliant, prestigious institutes that was part of the founding of this country. Same
Those
thing with
days are I'm sorry. Those days are over for that school.
and it's a shame, but it's such a shame. But if there was someone that was a president or in charge or just someone that was there to stop it back, I mean, hindsight's 2020. We didn't know what was going to happen when we implemented certain things in the 80s, 90s, and particularly, I think it actually came about in the 90s where all these folks, I don't want to say be installed, but maybe we thought back then that diversification of thought was better and what have you. Looking now, again, I feel like we need to correct course because we need those scholars to write those papers. We need discourse, and not just discourse to have discourse of why. What's your perspective? What's your factual what are your facts that you bring to the table in conclusion? What was your theory and experiment to come to that? And if we lose 1A, I mean, we won't have a country. We
Well,
won't. We
it,
won't.
it, we right, and there's a lot going on. I think that here's the good news. Folks like you are stepping up. I personally hope to see more and more of it with more diverse backgrounds. And I'm talking political diversity, diversity of ideas. To me, I'm accused of a lot of things. I've been called a homophobe, a racist, a xenophobe. I mean, take your pick. They've called me every name in the book. And the funny part is, some of the people who are my friends that these folks don't have those same feelings for, are far more right to the right than I am. I
Hmm.
am one of the most open-minded people in my circles. It's absolutely comical,
Right.
um, how wrong people have me, including the current state senator. I mean, she's mischaracterized me and misjudged me from the jump.
Well, it just
Um,
means you're doing something correct. If they have to slander you, it means you're a threat and that
well,
you're speaking some truth. That's
yeah,
just that's the state of our society today. Again, we just don't have proper.
that's right. And that's why we need folks. We need bigger voices. We need folks like yourself. We need more people. I don't particularly care what your political designation is. I don't think anyone should be married to any party.
Mm,
It just makes those parties stronger, which is not.
mhm.
You want the people to be stronger. It's of, for, and by the people, or of, by, and for the people. And
Right.
we need that third. You know, back in the 1700s, when those folks were chucking the tea into the Boston Harbor, it was only one third of the colonists that were taking on this. They wanted to take on the
Right.
greatest army ever assembled,
Right.
and they did it. One
Right.
third. We
Right.
we won't even we don't have a third of the people that are willing to open their mouths and speak out against the power. I
That is
mean,
what's wild. I mean, not it's not wild,
wild.
but it's wild to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely like crazy. Like when you see something that's so wrong, how do you not? And I know, and going back to what you said about cancel culture, I mean, we saw it. Like people lost their jobs, people lost their livelihoods about speaking about it. If you don't see the thing in the right way with the thing about the thing about the thing, then a lot of people stop saying what was truthful. So we do need to get back there. We need to be brave, like the one third, and start saving our country and speaking up. And again, it starts with our district. It starts with Massachusetts. I mean, if we can lead a revolution again, a non-violent revolution, wouldn't that
A
be wild?
political revolution, a
Yes,
political
wouldn't
revolution.
that be amazing? Um, but I'm not scared of the name calling anymore. I think you can be called a racist, a homophobe, day in day out, and you're like, okay, that's swell. So, but what's your point? What are your facts? Like, what is your, at least give me a feeling fact, a feeling about how you actually feel, instead of just saying those words because you disagree with my perspective or my beliefs. um I hope, my hope, and my husband and I are trying to start a family, and we want our children to grow up the way that we did, in a little bit, where everyone did have their different perspectives and opinions, but we all came together at the end of the day as Americans and did what was best for the country and for each other in our community, and we had such a sense of belonging and community. um, so we do need, and I am going to say this very clearly, we need a lot of fighters to step up. We need a lot of people to come out of the woodwork. And I know everyone's busy, society, like we're busy. We all have full-time jobs, we all have homes and children and puppies to take care of and what have you. But we need to find the time to step up and do the work again. We can't sit back and be comfortable and complain anymore. Because look where we are now. We just don't have it.
Well,
We
there's always been two ways to solve issues:
mm,
ballot box
mhm.
or the other alternative, which nobody wants.
Correct.
And you can feel. I mean, look, I'm not sure what's going to happen in the national election. Okay, however, there are a lot of people switching from independent to
Mhm,
Republican, from Democrat to Republican. There are people
mhm.
saying, I voted for Trump in 20. I couldn't vote for 16. I couldn't vote for Trump in 20. But guess what? I'm voting for him in
Yeah.
24 now because
Yep.
Biden was whatever. And I don't want to bring, I'm not much on national politics here, but this does just draw the point that there is a growing, we're sick of itness, if you will.
Correct. Yeah.
And the bigger that gets without being solved at the ballot box, the scarier it becomes for probably not my generation,
But
probably
the
not even my
next,
kids. Yeah, we're going
I,
to leave something behind for our grandchildren that we're not going to like if we don't clean this up and start getting along.
Todd, I can't tell you how many folks, when I'm collecting signatures, they say, "Oh, I just switched to independent," because they want to be able to vote Republican or independent. In going back to your point, I think people understand what's down the road for our grandkids. We have been blessed and so lucky to live so comfortably for so long. I think 2021 was the last, 9/11 was the last real horror show that we saw here in the US. But with the way things are going now, the state of Israel, um, just everything in general. I mean, there's so many aspects to speak to, but in a collaborative context and space, we see the path right now, and
If
it's not pretty. We don't want that for our children.
if we can't all agree that American citizens, I don't care what background they're of, but if we can't all agree that a group of American citizens is chanting "Death to America" in America,
Correct.
if
Yes.
we can't all agree that that has to stop,
1000%. Absolutely.
or
Absolutely. Fully agreed. Yes.
and here's something else that I find very interesting and very disturbing. Now I know the public school systems in general can't be held accountable for everybody's political persuasions.
Mhm.
However, to me, the idea that we had a young woman show up to one of the town council meetings where they were debating flying the Israeli flag,
Oh, I heard about this.
um, in response to October 7th.
Mhm. Mhm.
Sadly, our town council threw up on themselves and never really, the issue has been left unresolved, but that's a whole other thing.
Okay.
But you had a young woman in there telling, first of all, the fact that this person could graduate from Winthrop Public Schools or any public school system
Mhm.
and not fully comprehend what goes on between Israel and Hamas and the
Mhm.
Palestinians
Mhm. Mhm.
is one thing. But
Right.
then she's in there waving the Palestinian flag while demanding we don't fly the Israeli flag. Like the separation from reality. You know, you're doing what you're telling us not to do. Like, and
Right.
you're doing it without a vote, without permission.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know. Anyway,
So, well,
uh,
I'm half Jewish,
okay.
so I'm very, and also I'm a semi-historian, so I understand, um, a it's such a sensitive and touchy subject, but with that being said, I understand the history of Israel. I understand the Palestinian borders. I understand what's gone on for millions, not millions, but thousands and thousands of years, and the difference. If anyone can support what happened on October 7th, no, absolutely not. And anyone who is, I mean, it's the same people that I feel like want to be a part of something, but they don't know what the real something should be. So they're following the lead of the general group of the cool kids per se. I don't know how else to put it in context because it's so uneducated. Anyone who knew what's gone on, what Gaza is about, what Hamas is about, they would never, ever, 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 ever support that. The Palestinians in Palestine deserve to be free. They deserve to be their own folks. When it comes to Gaza and Hamas, the Palestinians elected, I use air quotes, Hamas. So that's a whole separate issue. And I just don't feel like as a school system, I mean, maybe not here in Winthrop, I'm not quite sure. I haven't looked into it. I'm not going to speak to things that I don't know exactly about. But for anyone to not allow the Israeli flag and the Palestinian, because we have to have compassion for the Palestinian people. A lot of them are put in a position that they don't want to be in, and they just
You're flapping out. Uh, come back to us. Come back to us. All right. More technical difficulties. Oh, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Um. All right. Oh, let me get you back. Why? What happened there?
There we go. It's always so
So
wacky.
I know.
No, just my whole
Wow.
thing again. We have to be compassionate. We need to also be very sensitive to both sides. I think that there's a lot of, again, it goes back to many issues in our country right now that there's only one side of the story being told in the mainstream media and along the platforms of TikTok and Instagram and what have you that young people are seeing. And I just I think my moral of my story and my point is we need to get back to being America and proud to be American and helping those that are our allies and ensuring that there is peace and we don't get into useless wars. And we are uplifting and protecting those that are the most vulnerable. Um, it's a sad state of affairs over there right now, and I just wish everyone really knew what was going on and what the chant is just they don't even know what they're chanting, which is wild. They have no idea.
It's
One of them
wild. It's all
they
wild. I
don't know
mean,
what that means.
it's
As
free
a
speech,
grown man,
right?
they don't know what that means.
Right. It's free speech. They're allowed to do it.
Right,
I mean, although is that a threat? I don't know. I mean, you know, because if there are certain things that the mention of the fact that you might have your license to carry can be under certain circumstances construed as a threat.
right.
So, is this a threat? I don't know, but I respect people's rights to say what they want to say. as long as they're not shouting fire in a crowded theater type thing.
Right.
Or I mean, but to disrespect the United States the way they have, just and again, I'm getting lost in the
No,
national
everyone has
stuff.
freedom of speech. We have to allow freedom of speech, and again, we have to have healthy discourse. I think that we're in such a heightened, sensitive environment right now that, um, and again, the propaganda machine has been going for so long that we need to be careful of the movements that we're getting behind and what we're doing. Everyone has a right to protest and see what they need to say, but we do need to be careful as a society at whole, understanding what we're getting behind and why we're protesting and the facts behind it. So that I think that that's what I'm really trying to get at.
So Gianna, you can see we have a question there from the audience, and they did spell your name wrong, but we won't out who they are. Why don't you give us a quick rundown of what you would hope to get done in your first 90?
Oh my goodness.
Although let me before you answer that, let me caveat that as most who have served will know, and I'm probably tipping what I think the right answer is. The first, it takes a bit to get fully ramped up and be effective. I'll leave it at that, and I'll let Gianna take the question.
Um, no, Todd is correct. It does take a bit of time to get immersed and really understand what's going on. During campaigning, I really do. My number one focus is understanding the issues here in our district. And within the first 90 days, or is to be able to draft and implement a bill that's important or an amendment or be able to vote with my district, whatever comes up first, because everything is a bill that's very important to us might be on the docket within the first 30 days that I'm there or the first 2 weeks that I'm there. So really understanding the important heightened issues for our district and why. With that being said, though, the 3A issue is a major issue, and I will be working with many, many, many people to ensure that it doesn't affect us. And how do we? So Milton put it on their ballot. They voted it no, but there are consequences to that. Maura Healey is saying, well, this is legislation and too bad for you. You're going to miss out on grants and other accommodations. Maybe trying to implement an addendum that would ensure that towns and cities that don't want the 3A implemented would be up for vote. So we are in a tough battle here in Massachusetts, not to go back into an uphill, but we only have 4 Republicans right now in the Senate. It's very hard to accomplish things with only 4 Republicans. So we do not just in Third Suffolk, but everywhere else. We really need to put up good candidates that know what they're doing. So within the first 90 days, we can accomplish what is important to our district, and that's going to help us as a whole.
Wow. Well, Gianna, I think we should close because we've gone an hour and I wanted to keep you for a half, but I was riveted by the conversation. So I want to thank you. Why don't you give us one more update on how to get in touch with you and any closing thoughts you have, and we'll close the show.
Well, thank you so much, Todd, for having me. I really, truly appreciate your time and your generosity with your time in providing this hour to talk. Even though it's supposed to be a half hour, I am a chatter. So you can find me again, Jeanna, Jeanna .TAMAS at gmail.com. And all of my social medias will be up, which will be Jeanna, Jeanna, 4, the number 4, MA Senate. So that'll be across all social media platforms starting tomorrow. I believe we go live tomorrow. If anyone has any questions, again, Todd's been so gracious. Please DM him. He'll get in contact with me, and I certainly will follow up right away.
Yes, yes. And Gianna, thank you again for being brave. As anyone who's hung around me and been work with me on my last campaign knows, it can be really really trying on your family and you. So thank you very much, and I look forward to assisting you in getting on the ballot and seeing what you can do. Uh,
Thank you, Todd. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, and Gianna, I want you. I'm going to end the show. Stick around. I'll be back to you.
Okay.
All right, so there you have it, Gianna. I want to say Tamas because it sounds like tomato. Tamas, candidate for state senator. If you are inclined to help, please let me know. And like I always say, without my better half, uh, all politics starts at the local level. It starts and ends there. Please share this if you enjoyed it. And please pay attention. Pay attention to who's running locally. Pay attention to your state level representation. This is how we win back our state and our country. Have a great night. We'll see you likely next week. I'm going to try to line up a discussion for a 1A. Thanks and take care.